All right, Jesse on fire. Welcome back, son. I am back in my studio. I apologize for the hiatus. I was traveling and stuff, all that. Now, I want to take a second before I even get into the video, which I'm sure you guys have seen the title and seen the thumbnail, so you know what it's going to be about. And I just want to say something, okay? I just watched the countdown to UFC 258 with Burns and Usman, the first one that came out that focuses exclusively on Usman and Burns. I just want to say two things. Number one, I love this sport so much it literally hurts. I said that we were watching it while we were getting ready, my wife and I, and I was literally just like, I love this sport, man. I love it. I love it. I love it. And especially a fight like this. Okay, this is what it's all about. It's all about the people, man. The people and the stories and their relationship, whether they hate each other or like each other, how they handle it psychologically. I love it, okay? I love it. I love it more than anything, okay? So that. Then the other thing I want to say is that the people who do the countdowns do such a good job. Just an exceptional job. And I have a major update to my thought process going into this fight after watching it too, which is what this video is about. So if you like the content, subscribe and ring the bell, okay? I never fought in the UFC, but watch my videos. Tell me if it's not your favorite MMA channel, inside of watching 2 or 3 videos. If it's not, then don't subscribe. Actually, no, you have to subscribe if it's in your top 3. How about that? And if it's not your top 3, go ahead and throw me which 3 are better, okay? Anywho, let's do this thing. So you guys will all likely remember that I did a video, one of my most clickbaity titles, but, where I said I had a video of Gilbert Burns dominating Kamaru Usman sparring, Obviously, that was, listen, the sparring part, that is something I have a lot of experience with, okay? So, obviously, I know a 9-second exchange is not going to be indicative of a full-throttle MMA fight between two guys, okay? I just did think that the sparring footage was interesting. But nonetheless, you guys may remember that video. I think it has like 50,000 views or something like that, right? And that entire video is basically dedicated to me talking about why I think Gilbert Burns is going to win that fight, okay? Now, one of the things that the primary thing, exclusively what I focused on in that video is all about their skills, right? How do fighters match up against other fighters? If this guy wins generally by stand-up, and no one's ever really given him a hard time on his feet, and the other guy, doesn't really have the ability to take the fight to the ground, then, XYZ. It's just matching up strengths and weaknesses and how people win fights previously. And I thought that the fight very much favored Gilbert Burns because Kamaru Usman's number one weapon of being able to take a guy to the ground is out. Because you're not, I did learn Kamaru Usman is a black belt in jiu-jitsu, but I'm not going to be educating anyone telling you that there are a lot of black belts, okay? Gilbert Burns is a world champion, okay? The Brazilian national champion in jiu-jitsu and the world champion in jiu-jitsu 3 times, okay? So it's not like a black belt is, but Kamaru's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. Okay, he's still not going to be as good as Gilbert Burns, right? But anyway, it's neither here nor there. So the point was that I thought the fight's going to stay on the feet, etc., whatever. Here's what I saw on the countdown that made me go, whoa, I might have this wrong. Like, it's possible that I have this wrong. And I think that a person's psyche going into a fight. Now, I realize I'm contradicting myself. I did an entire video where I talked about, that people give too much credit to people psyching the other fighter out, right? Like I was like, everybody, the narrative of Conor wins is that he got in the guy's head, incredible job. And then if he loses, it's because of, people discount the skills if Conor's involved in the fight, which I think is stupid, right? When obviously the skills matter, whatever. But the mindset obviously does matter. So I'm literally saying something that kind of contradicts what I said in that video. But obviously, mindset matters, especially in the environment that I'm going to talk about right now, okay? So when I first talked about this and I said that I thought it was very telling that Kamaru Usman left camp as soon as he found out he was going to fight Gilbert Burns, and I thought that might mean, I speculated that might mean that he knows Gilbert Burns is a problem for him, that they've been training together and Gilbert Burns, there's a problem. They know each other's games, right? Like they're sparring 85%, when they're striking and on the ground, if you're getting tapped out by a guy, right? So that was my speculation. Now I have a very different take on it. Very different, and in the opposite direction, where I'm like, oh, okay. So here's what I learned. Let me lay out what I learned in the countdown, which I don't know if you guys have watched it yet. Highly recommend it. What I learned is that Gilbert Burns and Kamaru Usman were friends. Okay, they weren't just training partners. Like, Kamaru Usman went to Gilbert Burns' kid's birthday party. Like they've hung out outside of training. Okay, it's not like they were like best friends, but they're friends. Okay, Kamaru Usman cornered Gilbert Burns in a fight. Okay, like you have a lot of training partners, right? Like Kamaru Usman, another fighter. If you see another fighter in someone's corner, that's their boy generally, right? So Kamaru Usman cornered Gilbert Burns. So they're friends. They were friends before. Okay, now that really matters in a fight. Okay, that really matters. And I actually, now that I'm saying this out loud, I remember I did a video about this a long time ago when that fight was first announced, where I was saying, I wish that I could see the dynamic between the two guys. Like, I wish I could see video of them interacting so I could gauge if one of those guys is kind of like the bigger personality. But more than anything, what you're trying to gauge is one of them very, is the other person's approval very important to them? Okay. If you have that dynamic, okay, if someone's approval, if you're like, people like that where you're like, you really want them to like you, right? That dynamic is poison in a fight. If you're the one who really, if the person you're fighting is someone that you really care about their approval of you, that's the only, that dynamic that can work against you real badly. Just, weasel its way into your brain. But there's not here nor there. Okay, so when Gilbert Burns is talking about him and Kamaru Usman's relationship, he's talking about him like, yeah, he's a friend, but I have to fight him, right? He's a friend, I have to fight him, he knows my kids, whatever. Then they talk to Kamaru Usman, okay? And what does Kamaru Usman say after every fight? Okay, now let me also say this. This countdown, there are lots of fighters that I started out in one place with them and I ended up in another place in terms of my connection to them and their career and whether I root for them, etc. Okay, Conor being the number one example. I hated Conor, man, until in between Nate Diaz 1 and Nate Diaz 2. That's where he went from literally like one of my least favorite fighters to my favorite fighter. The way that he handled that, right? He goes and talks shit, loses, takes it like a man, goes and trains for 4 months, does no prep, takes the fight again at 170, no press, and then he comes out and he wins in one of the most incredible dog fights of all time. And I was like, damn, that's why I watch this fucking sport, is for that, So that, right? So that's Conor. Then like Khabib too. Khabib, I never disliked Khabib, but he went from someone that I was just like aware of to someone who's one of my absolute favorite guys ever. And Kamaru Usman is actually one of these guys I actually kind of rooted against by nature. Like I'm like, I always feel like I want him to lose. Like I rooted against him against Colby. I rooted against him against Masvidal. Although those two guys are like some of my favorites. I would never root for Usman over those guys. But going into this Burns fight, I was rooting against him. And then, he, after every one of his fights, they always say like, they put a microphone in his face and what does he say? What does he attribute his success to? His mind. Always. He says that exact thing. He says, I have the strongest mind. I have a stronger mind than any of these guys, right? He knows that is his edge. He works as hard or harder than anyone, and he has the mental fortitude to overcome anything, right? And so that obviously is something that he values very much. And they asked him about his relationship with Gilbert Burns at the end of the countdown. I mean, you're talking like 5 minutes left in this thing. You had to wait till the very end to hear this. And he goes, and they've established they were friends. Okay, like there's no. I mean, they might not have been like the best friends, but they're friends, right? And at the end, they asked Kamaru about him, and he goes, he's like, I liked him. He says liked. He says in past tense, I liked him. Not he's my friend that I'm fighting and then we'll be cool. I liked him, right? And he goes, and I considered him a friend, but, in hindsight, I learned some new things about him. Now I realize he wasn't much more than an acquaintance. And I'm like, fuck, man. Fuck. That's impressive, right? It's impressive. Why? Why is that impressive? I mean, because in the context of him, right, of Kamaru Usman as a person that where you think about him and what makes him go and where he focuses his energy on making sure that he's excellent. It's about his mind, right? So plenty of guys could go, hey, he's not going to find a friend in the octagon. Everyone says that, right? Everyone says that. And some guys will act like they're mad at a guy to sell the fight, whatever. This is different, okay? He has literally convinced himself he doesn't like him for real. Like, not for show. He didn't make a big thing about it. They just asked him, and very calmly he said, I liked him. But now I realize he wasn't really much more than an acquaintance. He's really convinced himself that the guy isn't shit to him because he knows that's what he needs to do to win the fight. And I was like, fuck, man. Wow. Because I can tell the difference. I mean, again, I can tell the difference. If a guy says something like that, I don't just hear his words. I can look through him and I can see exactly, like, it's not just a person going, yeah, well, he's like Kamaru Usman. I don't know if I'm doing a good job communicating this. He has, this is a fact to him now that this is not his fucking friend. Okay. It's not his friend. Now, I would imagine, the reason why I think it's so impressive is I would imagine as soon as the fight's over, they're going to be friends. He'll be able to just turn that back off, or at least like ease into it. But going into this fight, the psychological edge for sure goes to Kamaru Usman after watching that. For sure. 100%. Now, that being said, Gilbert Burns is a multi-time world champion. Let me talk about that too, actually. So another thing that I was thinking about while I was watching the countdown is Gilbert Burns has won multiple world championships. And what that means, it's in jiu-jitsu, right? Right. Obviously, I'm not talking about just like the skills. I'm talking about the mindset of a person who's fighting for the championship, fighting for the world championship, okay? Gilbert Burns does not fold when they're fighting for the world championship, all right? So you got two guys that have proven that on the biggest stage, when all the marbles are there, they fucking win, right? Both these guys win. And you got this friendship dynamic. I mean, listen, as far as the friendship thing goes, Usman has a huge edge there because huge. Like, I don't think that necessarily Gilbert Burns is going to be holding back or whatever, but he hasn't addressed it, right? He hasn't addressed the fact that he does like Kamaru Usman, and maybe it won't matter. Maybe he'll be able to fight him exactly the same, but there's definitely not going to be any hesitation on Usman's side, right? And Usman's been training, dude. I mean, he's been training with Trevor Whitman now for a long enough time that he could have developed some new stand-up skills. Because basically my entire hypothesis around this fight is that Gilbert Burns is better on his feet. He's faster, he's more explosive, and I don't think the fight's going to go to the ground. So, yeah, I don't know, man. Before I watched that, I was pretty convinced Gilbert Burns is going to win. And after watching it, I'm like, oof, I don't know, man. I don't know. Anyway, that's what I got. By the way, if you made it this far, I'll just tease this. I am going to make a video this week about Ben Askren. And anybody who watches it, if you watch the video that I make and then you bet on Ben Askren to beat Jake Paul, shame on you. Okay? Shame on you. And this is not going to be regurgitating old information. I mean, I'll cut some clips and stuff. But like, there is a factor going into this fight that people are not talking about that I can't understand. It can only mean that people just are not really aware. Partially, I mean, I'll just say it's partially going to be about his hip replacement. I mean, people are acting as if like that's just kind of like, oh yeah, I got a hip replaced and then now he's going to fight Jake Paul, as if that's a non-factor. It's like, yeah, that's a fucking huge factor, man. That is an astronomical factor. And I'm going to talk about Ben Askren psychologically and whether or not he might take money knowing he doesn't have a really big chance of winning. Like, does he really care? Anyway, so if you like the content, subscribe and ring the bell and tell your friends. Peace.